When I was 7 years old, I burned with a fever for 3 days, and not once did anyone send for a doctor. Instead, a woman came to our house after dark. She sat on the edge of my bed. She took a length of plain string in her hands, and she began to whisper over me in Pennsylvania Dutch, words I was not allowed to ask about. My mother stood in the doorway with her hands folded, and she was not frightened. She was relieved, because in the world I grew up in, that woman was the right answer. The English doctor was the wrong one. I am not telling you this to make my people look strange. I love them. I love them more than you can know, and that is exactly why the silence has to end. Because that string and that whisper and that quiet refusal to walk through a hospital door, they are gentle most of the time, and then, every so often, they are not. And nobody ever tells you about the times they are not. So let me tell you the things I learned about how the Amish heal and what it costs from the inside. The woman who came to my bedside that night was a Brauch healer. In the old German, the word is Braucherei, and most outsiders have never heard it. She was not a witch, and she was not a nurse. She was something our community trusted more than either. When a child fell sick, when a baby would not stop crying, when a man had a sprain that would not settle, you did not call an ambulance. You sent word down the road that so-and-so needed someone to try for them, and the Brauch woman would come. She would measure you with that string, laying it along your arm, your spine, your leg, looking for where the body had gone wrong. They believed a sickness had a length, and that the string could find it. She would lay her hands on the hot skin and speak the verses, low and steady, the same ones her grandmother taught her, the same ones that were never written down because writing them down was said to break them. They could only be passed by voice, and only across the line between man and woman. A man taught a woman taught a man, never your own kind, or the power was said to leave you. There is a word for the angry red inflammation on a child's skin, wildfire, the wildfire, and the Brauch woman would speak to it like a living thing and tell it to leave, drawing her hand down the skin again and again, as if she were brushing the heat off and onto the floor. And sometimes the fever broke by morning, and everyone in the house took that as proof. No one ever counted the times it didn't break, or asked what the fever might have done in those hours we were singing verses over it. I want to be fair. A frightened mother being told her child will be fine by a calm woman she has known her whole life, there is real comfort in that, and comfort is not nothing. But here is what they do not tell you. The Brauch was not a first option that ran alongside the doctor. It was the first call instead of the doctor. By the time a family even thought about the English medicine, the Brauch had already been tried, and tried again, and a day or two had already passed. And a day or two is everything. When the thing inside a child is not a fever, a string can pull out. That's the first thing they don't want you to know. The second thing is that we did have a medical system. It just did not have any doctors in it. When the Brauch was not enough, we did not go to a hospital. We went to the circuit. Every Amish community has one. A trusted ring of people you are allowed to see, passed quietly from one bishop to the next, from one family to the next, the way you would pass along the name of a good horse. There was a chiropractor 2 counties over who took us on Saturdays, the waiting room full of straw hats and bonnets, families who had ridden in a hired van for 2 hours to be cracked and adjusted. There was a reflexologist who would press the bottoms of your feet and tell you which organ was failing. There was a man who read the coloured flecks in the iris of your eye and told you what was wrong with your liver. There were vitamin shots and herbal drops and machines that hummed and were said to balance you. None of them had gone to medical school. That was the point. They were ours, or close enough to ours, plain people, or people who understood plain people, who would never push a pill or a needle or a scan you did not believe in. You trusted them precisely because they were not real doctors. A real doctor was English. A real doctor would scare you and bill you and look down on you and maybe take your child away. The circuit would not. The circuit spoke softly and took cash and let you go home believing the body could fix itself if you just adjusted the right bone. I went to that chiropractor more times than I can count, and for an aching back from baling hay, maybe it helped. But I watched families take a truly sick person down that circuit, foot rub to eye, reading to adjustment to herbal drop, week after week, while the real thing grew quietly worse. Because the one door they would not open was the one with a doctor behind it. That's the second thing. The third thing lives in the cabinet over the kitchen sink in every Amish home I have ever been in. Open it, and you will not find aspirin. You will find a comfrey poultice wrapped in cloth for a sprain. You will find lobelia and a bottle of dark tincture and the salve every grandmother makes from her own recipe and gives out at funerals and births alike. You will find raw garlic crushed for an infection, peppermint for the stomach, an onion cut open and set by the bed to draw out a chest cold. There is a remedy for everything handed down by mouth and a deep bone-level distrust of anything that came from an English pharmacy. We called those the chemicals. We did not put chemicals in the body. We put what God grew in the garden. And I want to be honest, some of it was real. Garlic does fight infection. Peppermint does settle a stomach. Generations of women keeping a family alive on what grew behind the house is not foolishness. It is knowledge. But it is knowledge with no edge marked on it. No point where someone says, this one is past what the garden can fix, this one needs more. The salve was treated as equal to the surgeon, and a salve cannot reach an appendix. Now, before I go on, I need to ask you something, plainly, the way I'd ask if you were sitting across from me. If anything I've said is landing true, take 1 second and subscribe and leave one word in the comments. Just tell me where you're watching from. It tells me people actually want the truth about my people, and not just the costume and the cute buggy photos. Because the next thing is the one they punish you for telling. Stay with me. The fourth thing is about money, and it is the quiet reason so many of this stays buried. The Amish carry no health insurance, none. There is a religious exemption, and we used it. Because to us, insurance was a kind of faithlessness. To pay a company every month against the chance of disaster was to admit you did not trust God to provide and the church to catch you. And the church did catch you. That is the beautiful part. And it is true, and I will not let anyone take it from us. When a family was crushed by a hospital bill, the word went out, and the GMA, the church district, the people who worship in each other's homes, passed the hat. Mutual aid, we called it. A man's barn burns and the community rebuilds it in a day. A child needs surgery and the district pays for it in cash. There is nothing in the English world as strong as that, and I miss it every day of my life. But sit with the math the way a sick Amish father has to sit with it. He has no insurance. He knows that walking into an emergency room means a bill with no ceiling, a bill that will land not just on him, but on his brothers, his cousins, the widow 2 farms over, everyone who will have to give. He knows that if he goes in for something that turns out to be nothing, he has spent the church's money and shamed himself. So what does he do when the pain in his side is bad but maybe not that bad? He waits. He tries the brauch. He tries the circuit. He prays. He tells himself it will pass because going in is not just expensive, it is a thing the whole community will know about and quietly weigh. The mutual aid that makes the Amish so strong is the same thing that, in the dark, whispers to a frightened man, wait. Don't be a burden. Wait. That's the third thing, and it is the heaviest so far. The fifth thing is the one that turns all of it from custom into something with teeth. Because in my community, the bishop's word weighed more than any doctor's ever could. When a man was sick and unsure, he did not really decide for himself. He listened to the church. And the church, through the deacon, through the bishop, through the unspoken pull of the ordnung, the rules we lived by, leaned always the same direction. Trust the Lord, trust the old ways, do not run to the English at the first fear, to go to a specialist, to push for a scan, to insist on the hospital, that could be read as pride, as fear, as a man who did not trust God to heal him the way God had always healed his fathers. I watched it happen. I watched a person who wanted to go in be gently, lovingly talked out of it by men who meant nothing but good, men who truly believed that faith was the medicine and that the doctor was the doubt. And if you went anyway, if you defied that quiet counsel and drove to the city and let the English cut into you, you were not shunned for it, not exactly, but you were watched. It became a thing whispered at the next church Sunday, between the benches, the bench wagon hauls from home to home. He didn't trust the Lord. She ran to the English. There is a word for the full weight of being cut off, the ban, the maidong, and almost no one risks the full ban over a hospital. They don't have to. The fear of the whisper is enough. The fear of being the family that didn't trust God is enough to keep a man home in his own bed, getting worse, surrounded by people who love him and are praying him straight into the ground. That's the fifth thing. And here is the last thing, the one I can barely say, the one this whole video has been walking toward. There is a cost to a community that marries only within itself for 300 years. We came from a small handful of families who crossed the ocean together, and we married our own, generation after generation, the gene pool closing tighter with each one. And so, among the Amish, there are illnesses that almost no one else on earth carries, a kind of jaundice that can take a newborn, a disorder that makes the body break down wrong, the babies who smell faintly of maple syrup and do not thrive, the sudden quiet deaths in the night that move through certain families like a shadow. These are not curses, they are the simple arithmetic of a closed circle. And the cruel part is that many of them are manageable now, caught early, watched, treated, if a family will only walk through the door of the very kind of specialist the community teaches you to fear. But it is not only the rare diseases, it is the ordinary ones. It is an appendix that bursts because the Brauch was called first, and the circuit second, and the hospital last, when last was too late. It is a diabetic child whose family trusted the herbs and the prayer over the needle. It is an infection that any English drugstore would have ended in a week, left to spread, because chemicals are not what we put in the body. We had 8th grade schooling and no more. The law lets us stop there, and we do. So there was no one in the house who had ever been taught what an infection in the blood can do, or how fast it can do it. We knew the seasons and the soil and scripture by heart. We did not know that. I have stood at the edge of a grave in a plain wooden box, the whole Gme gathered around it, singing in the old slow way, and known in my bones, that the thing in that box did not have to be there. That a phone call made 3 days earlier to the one number nobody was allowed to call would have changed everything. And I watched the family take comfort in the very thing that failed them, telling each other it was God's will, when it was not God. It was the line. It was the silence around the line. That's the 6th thing, and it is the reason I left. People ask me what leaving cost. They picture the buggy and the beard and think it was about clothes, about freedom, about being young and wanting the world. It was not. I left because I could not stay inside a love that beautiful and that dangerous at the same time. Because I could not keep standing at gravesides telling myself it was God's will, when some part of me knew that God also made the doctor and the antibiotic and the human being who could have helped if only we had let them. I want to be so clear about this because I know how it can be twisted. The Amish are not fools. They are not careless with their children. They love their children with a fierceness that would shame most of the English world. The Brauch woman, the circuit, the cabinet over the sink, the church passing the hat. All of it comes from love and faith and a real, hard-won wisdom about living close to the land and close to each other. Most days, it does no harm at all. Most days, it is gentler and warmer than anything a fluorescent waiting room could offer. But love and faith are not the same as medicine, and the silence around the times the line was drawn too late, the silence that lets the next family make the same call, in the same dark, with the same trust, that silence is the only thing in my old life I could not forgive. So I broke it. I am the one who ran to the English, and I would rather be the watched one, the whispered about one, than stand at one more grave that did not have to be dug. There is so much more I could not say here, names I won't put on this screen, things that would not survive on this platform, the parts of these stories that I keep written down where they're safe. If you want the whole of it, the things I couldn't say on camera are in writing, and the link is in the first pinned comment below. But whether you read another word from me or not, if you take one thing from a man who buried people he loved over a phone call no one would make, let it be this: faith and medicine are not enemies. You are allowed to pray and to call the doctor. You are allowed to love your people and still walk through the door they tell you to fear. Thank you for sitting with me. I'll see you next time.